Today, happy Father's Day for you dads. I hope that you get to snag one of the dad's root beer that we have for you set up around the building, and feel free to grab 1, 2, 6, whatever. I saw one family, each kid had one in each hand. They were walking out today, which is cool. Go for it. As long as supplies last, grab as many as you want. So anyway, happy Father's Day to you men. This week I was just considering being a man and some of the implications of that, and I came to the realization it's good to be a man. It really is. There's certain advantages to being a man as opposed to being a woman. For example, I realized that a 5-day vacation, it only requires one suitcase for a man. A phone conversation can be over in about 30 seconds flat. A face-to-face conversation can be done in about 15 seconds flat. And we're all good. All of our bases are covered at that point. Men can go to the bathroom without a support group. It's good there. And we can go to the restroom we can never clean our toilets either. We can just go on for years without ever cleaning our bathroom. Men's underwear is $10 for a 3-pack that'll last us about 3 years. It's good to be a man. We don't care if anybody notices if we get a new haircut. And the only time men retain water is if they have a canteen with them. So it's good to be a man. There are many good things about being a man, but there are also many challenges that come with being a man as well. Many challenges. I was reading an article that was just published with Psychology Today magazine, and they were documenting several challenges that men face that studies have shown. One is that men are impulsive. Men are much more impulsive than women. And so as a result of that, there's something known as an impulse control disorder. This disorder causes us to be more inclined to have alcohol and drug abuse, more inclined to leave a job too early. We have difficulty holding on to a job, violent outbursts, sexual misbehavior. And that's why men are much more inclined to be incarcerated than women. Often it's attributed to this impulse disorder. Men have a self-destructive desire for sex. Biologically, this desire for us is generally focused between 15 and 75. So pretty much you just got this issue, and it's not going away. But that desire can at times cause us to lose sight of the consequences of when we allow that desire to get the best of us. Men are often compelled to make money. They do make higher incomes than women, as has been noted. Sometimes that's because of discrimination. Other times it's because of a glass ceiling that men make more money than women, and so that's obviously wrong. However, there's further evidence that shows that it's more than just discrimination. It's more than a glass ceiling. That money motivates men more than it does women, and so because of that, you find that men are more willing to take on stressful and dangerous jobs, work longer hours, ignore their friends and family in pursuit of more money. Men are more likely to ignore possible losses and go all out, all in, to make a great gain. They're also more likely, because of this, to steal, to cheat, and to engage in various criminal activities. And that's not just for the small-time drug dealer, it's also for the Wall Street swindler. Men are just very motivated by money. Men also struggle to have social support. We will talk to each other about football, about fishing, about hunting, about our recent golf score. But we struggle to talk about what God is teaching us, marriage struggles that we might be having, challenges with parenting, and maybe insecurities within us that drive us towards whatever it is that we might pursue in life. Men also die younger than women. And many studies have shown this to just be a result of testosterone. As a result of having more testosterone in our bodies than women, we just live 5 to 10 years less than a woman lives. And so consider that the next time you get your testosterone injection. Some of you guys may do that. I don't know. It's a popular thing nowadays. So it's good to be a man. But there are many challenges with being a man as well. And so the challenge for us today, the way that we're going to simply articulate this, is for us to hold on. And it's for men. But it's not just for men, but this message is really for all of us. That there are going to be some key things that we're going to look at that are going to help us to hold on to what it is that God has given us. Because too often, God gives us something and we just let it go. We don't realize how precious it is. And so we just let it just go off into the wind. And we're left with what it is that only we can gain by ourselves, which isn't much usually. And so we have to hold on. And so as men, I'm going to challenge you to hold on to your integrity, hold on to your marriage, hold on to your children, to hold on to your faith, hold on to your confidence, hold on to your calling, hold on to your discipline. Just hold. The challenge today is to hold on. But how do we hold on and not let go? There's a verse in 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 13 that I just love. And in this verse, there's 4 directives that Paul gives the Corinthian church. And in turn, he also gives us. And these 4 directives we'll find are things that can challenge all of us, but especially us men. And this is what the verse says. It says, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. The first thing the verse tells us to do is be watchful. It's pointing towards us having an alert, being alert. And so if you want to hold on as a man, this is the first thing that you have to grab a hold of, and that's this, is that that men need to be on alert. And the way that Paul speaks in this particular verse, the Greek word there is not just a momentary watchfulness that you might have in a moment. Instead, it is a continual alertness that is always with you. It's as if you're in a battle that's never going to end, and you're on the wall of your home, you're on the wall of the castle, you're on the wall of your particular kingdom, and you're looking off into the distance for movement, because you know that at any point in time the enemy might attack. And when the enemy is seemingly moving, you know that in that particular moment that an alarm has to be sounded. And so you are going to be watchful. You are always going to be on alert. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8 says this to us, that be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Be alert and of sober mind. The devil is looking for someone, not something. The devil doesn't want your job. He doesn't want your money. I don't even think he wants your health. But what he does want is you. And he wants your heart. He wants your soul. The devil is looking for someone to devour. You have to be alert. You have to be watchful. It's been my observation that many of us have instances in which we struggle with this more than others. You have a situation that if you find yourself in, it's going to cause you to be more vulnerable than other situations. And you know what those situations are for you. I know what they are for me. Generally, if I'm tired, if I'm worn down, that isn't going to be a good place for me. Bad things generally happen when I get into that situation. I have to be alert. I have a family member of mine who, good, godly man, loves his wife, loves his kids, does a good job with his home, with his faith, active in his church. He's great, unless you get him in a negotiation. And then it's in that situation that often the worst comes out of him. And in a business, from a business standpoint, that can be kind of good, because he's going to negotiate you down to the penny. He's going to get as much out of that negotiation as he possibly can. But when you transfer that over into how you function with friends and with family, it can become rather destructive in that environment. And that's a situation he has to be alert with. I have one of my best friends. He's 36, single guy, and he's a Christian. I would never doubt his salvation, but he's not living the life that God would have for him to live. And often it revolves around his relationships with other women. Because if he's in a relationship with other women, you guarantee that it is going to be a sexually active relationship. And even if there isn't a relationship, sex is just something that is a constant struggle of his. He admits to that. And yet, in those situations, he isn't always alert as he needs to be. And maybe for you, it's when alcohol's around. Maybe it is when you're traveling for work. Maybe the struggle for you is when you're managing your money. Maybe it's when you go to the mall. Maybe it's when a conversation's happening around you that isn't all that positive and you're just drawn into that gossip. What's the thing for you? Be on alert. The devil roams around, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. The second thing there that Paul challenged us with was to stand firm in faith. And the point that needs to be made here is that men need to be strong spiritually, to stand firm in the faith. What is being talked about here in this letter to the Corinthians is that the church was really struggling with their faith because things were happening and going on, and new teachings were being introduced to the church, and it was dividing the church. They weren't sure who they were supposed to follow. They weren't sure what they were supposed to believe. And Paul is challenging them. He's saying, stand firm in the faith. And it's not just a doctrinal issue for us. In some cases, it's other circumstances that we deal with. Men, when you face a challenge in life, are you going to point your family towards God? Are you going to stand firm in the faith? Are you going to let loose, let go, and stop holding on? What are you going to do? There's a story in Matthew chapter 8 in which Peter is seemingly at home, and then he leaves, and his mother-in-law is deathly sick. She seems like she's going to die. So Peter leaving probably wouldn't have been a good thing for his marriage, because his wife's mother is deathly sick, and he is leaving her, leaving the two of them there together. And so Peter, he leaves, but then he returns with Jesus. And he brings Jesus into this situation. And so Jesus brings hope into that situation, and he goes to Peter's mother-in-law, and he heals her, and immediately she rises again. I like how one preacher puts it. He says, I think that's why Peter denied him years later, because he healed his mother-in-law. You can laugh. Come on. Oh, my gosh, man. The first service loved that joke, by the way. They must have more mother-in-law issues, or they're not as scared. Whatever. I love my mother-in-law. The point I'm making is that there was a challenging situation there. And Peter, rather than running from the situation, he stayed firm in his faith, and he brought Jesus into it. That is your challenge, men, is that you have to stand firm in the faith. When you lose your job, when your health is deteriorating, when there is a challenge with your children, when there is marital stress, are you going to stand firm in your faith in that moment, or are you just going to throw all things off to the side and live however it is that you want to live? The next time that a Da Vinci Code type of movie is produced, or a book like that is written, are you going to stand firm in the faith? That's what Paul is saying here. He's saying, he's just saying, hey, look, this isn't going to stop. People are going to continually bring these types of teachings along that are going to attack the foundation of your faith. Just stand firm in your faith, and you will be okay. What are you going to do the next time something like that happens? Men, we need to stay strong spiritually. The third challenge that Paul has for us in this text, as he says, act like men, is that men need to be mature. So many of the problems that we face in life and even in the church is often due to immaturity. One commentator put it this way: Paul's words here carry the weight to stop acting like spiritual infants, quarreling, boasting, and indulging ourselves without any level of discipline. He says, besides, most problems we deal with in the church today are the result of immaturity. Men need to be mature. Let me ask you two questions. All of you. When you walk into a room, do you give life to that room, or do you take life from it? Do you give or do you take? My kids are 7, 5, and almost 3. Do you know what they do? They take. They'll just come and just take anything from me. We get on them and we tell them not to do that, but they take. That's what kids do. And, we're trying to guide them and discipline in them in that regard, but you know what? A 3-year-old is just going to take stuff. It's part of growing up. But eventually, there's going to come a point where my 3-year-old can't do that anymore. If she's 33 and she just walks up to you and takes something from you, she's going to get in trouble. That's not good. When you walk into a situation, are you giving something to it? Are you going into that situation and providing empathy for those that are hurting? Encouragement for those that are discouraged? Celebrating the successes of those that need to be celebrated? That's maturity. That's what men need to do. And too many men, we walk into situations and we're just a drag. We're a drain. We're not giving anything to those situations. We take from it. Kids take, men give. Second question I have for you is this, is that when you walk into a room and there is a problem, do you feed the tension or do you offer a resolution to the problem? In other words, if you walk into a situation and there's gossip or there's just problems happening all around, do you point fingers of blame? Do you maybe complain about how decisions that should have been made that weren't made? What are you doing in that situation that's helpful? Or do you enter into the room and just say, you know what? If I were 10, I would complain about all this. But now I'm 50, and we need to come up with a solution to this problem. Mature people enter into situations and they provide solutions. And Paul is saying, act like men. Stop acting like kids. And then the last thing he tells us is to be strong. Men need to be strengthened, and the strong that he's talking about here is not a natural strength that we just pull up our bootstraps and provide ourselves on our own. We can do that. It's not sustainable, but we can do that. He's talking about a strength that comes from God. And men need to be strengthened by God. Paul, he uses the same verb that he uses here as you consider the challenges that you're dealing with. The same verb that he uses here, he also uses in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10. It says, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Don't be strong in your talent, in your discipline, in your achievement, in your ingenuity, in your creativity. He says, be strong in the Lord. That those things are good. We're co-laborers with God, but when you enter into the situation, before you get there, you're praying, God, I need your strength, I need your help, I need your wisdom, I need your guidance to get me through this thing. Be strong in the Lord. Colossians chapter 1, verse 29 says, to this end I labor, struggling with all his energy, which so powerfully works in me. Paul's talking about the expansion of the gospel in the church. To this end I labor, he says, with all of his power that's at work within me. And it's so crazy that you would have a resource, an infinite resource available to you. Like if we could tap into the power of the sun, we would never have to worry, we would never have an energy crisis again. If you had that kind of a resource available to you that wouldn't destroy you, wouldn't you just tap into it? Of course. That's what we have with God. Not a resource that would destroy us, but a resource that gives us life. In John chapter 15, verse 5, Jesus said, I am the vine and you are the branches. He who remains in me and I in him will bear much fruit. What fruit do you want to bear in life? If it's the fruit that God would have you to bear, if it's what God is calling you to, then you will need his help for that. That little over 7 years ago, I wrote a note to my daughter. Where that note has gone, I have no idea. But the content of it, I'm still very familiar with. Because as I was writing that note, not only did I communicate a message and a commitment and a promise to my daughter, but out of that note, I also found really a purpose for myself, the kind of fruit that I want to bear in life. I told her, I said, I'm committing to you that I will do everything I can to serve the Lord faithfully, to love your wife, to love your mom faithfully, my wife, and to do everything I can to raise you up in the Lord. That's the kind of fruit that I want to bear. When I breathe my last, I just want to be able to say, I did everything I could in his power to serve God faithfully, to love my wife faithfully, and to do everything I can to raise my kids up in the Lord. That's the kind of fruit that I want to produce. And so for you men, be watchful. Stand firm in the faith, act like men, and be strong. That's what I'm challenging you to do so that you can hold on to all that God is giving you. Now, with that being said, I want to introduce you to a couple here. Some of you know them, some of you don't. Josh and Jill Bryant. Josh and Jill, would you go ahead and come up? And as they're coming up, would you give them a hand? Yeah. They're going to share some of their story with you. And as they're sharing their story, what I think that you will draw away from it is how they held, is how their marriage, even though it wasn't in the best of places, how they were able to hold on to it and get to where they're all at today. So Josh and Jill, good to see you again. So if you could, tell everybody here how long you've been married and how it is that you met.
We think we've been married about 15 years. The math is complicated. And we met, I was 20, and Josh was 23, and we met in an old quarry. I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but it was an old rock pile that all the kids used to go when they weren't old enough to really go out. So we just go hang out on a bunch of pile of rocks. It was really fun. And I saw this guy.
And illegal.
And not totally illegal.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it. Don't do that. 19 and 20-year-olds, don't hang out at rock pits. But I saw this guy, and he was wearing this super gross hat. Like, it should have been burned, but he was wearing it. So I knew it was important to him, and I took it, and then I disappeared.
And then from there, so she takes your hat, and then you track her down, and you're like, I want my hat back. And then basically she's like, yeah, if you take me out.
In a nutshell, yes.
Yeah. So you start dating, and then you realize that she's the one.
I do. And
what was it about her that caused you to realize that?
I felt everything inside of me that I was no doubt whatsoever. That she was just amazing, beautiful, humbled, the best thing that could ever make me a better person.
Yeah. And as you want her to be your wife, what was your thoughts going into marriage? Like, what would it be like? What were you hoping that it would consist of? What have been your experiences with family?
Our experiences, both of us come from separated households. Both of our parents separated very early, and we didn't exactly have the best role models or a whole lot of good images of what it should have been like. So we kind of had our own idea of what it's supposed to look like. And for me, it's, you're moving in with your best friend, it's gonna be a party, but it's not.
So Jill, you get married, and tell us what the first year, 2 years is like.
It was awful. It was so bad. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know what it looked like. We knew what we didn't want it to be. We'd both experienced that in our own homes. But just because you know how something shouldn't be, that doesn't mean you know how to create the way that it should be. And so we were just struggling, and we were both super self-centered, and I thought that he should do everything in his power to make me happy. That was his job. And he thought the same thing, and so that caused a lot of disconnect and struggle in the first couple of years. So we did logically what you would do. We had a baby to fix it.
Yeah, nobody can relate to the challenges of the first year of marriage, right? No, we all go through challenges like the first year or two. We don't all have a kid to fix it, but you did, and so then what happened after that?
Well, so then you take two super self-centered people that don't know what they're doing, and now you have this poor innocent little baby that needs to be cared for, and it was just too much. We both pursued our careers pretty much independently. We became really good business partners. We could talk about schedules and money and dinner plans and that kind of thing, and we just kind of lived together. We talk about how it felt like we were living together as roommates. And I didn't think that life was supposed to be like that, and so I said I was done. I wanted out. I really thought Josh deserved to be with someone who loved him as much as he loved me, and I knew I couldn't do that, so I quit.
And so Jill wanted out. What did you want to do, Josh?
Send her to a counselor and get checked for medication.
So you wanted to make it work.
I wanted everything to make it work because I knew it was supposed to, and why not? It's not that difficult. All you got to do is just make it look good.
Yeah.
And if I love her, then she has to love me.
Right.
You know, it's worth fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept fighting.
Yeah. But ultimately you split up, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then, so you split up and
We just
you
moved
officially
on.
divorced.
Yes, we filed paperwork. We filed our paperwork together. We played rock, paper, scissors over the last piece of furniture that we couldn't agree on because we divvied everything up. The couch, the TV, we both wanted this ridiculous computer desk that was like $50 from Office Depot, and that was the only thing we fought over. So we played rock, paper, scissors to see who got it. Did you win? I don't even remember
got
who
it?
won. I think I got it.
All right, we got to talk before. You can't say that and then not know who got it. Now we're all gonna. Now just ruin the rest of the talk. Now we're like, who got it? So
we filed.
You separated.
Yep. Moved on. Started focusing on my career. Josh was focused on his career. We were really good at co-parenting. Had 50-50 custody of our oldest son, our only son, and it was great. Just moving right along. 2 Christmases, 2 birthdays, spending Easter alone. It was
So
fantastic.
So you're apart, and what were you trying to do in regards to your relationship as you two were apart?
I was always constantly the thorn in her side. I was always making
In what
myself-
way?
Just convincing her that she made a mistake, that she was wrong, she shouldn't have left. And not going about the right way, obviously, but I made sure that I always told her that I was still there and this still needs to happen. You can't just give up on it.
You weren't willing to let go.
No, never. And when we both decided that it was done, is for me is when she moved on first to me because she was in a relationship. She moved in with somebody else and I couldn't take it. You know, for me that was just like the gut wrenching, here's my heart, stab it, see you later. And so I moved. I moved out of state, promoted in my company, and that was for me the only way I could handle it was not being around.
But you still were around though, right?
But I still was. I still managed to figure out how I could either fly or drive every day that I had off, which I could usually get a day or 2 off every month. So I'd either drive or I would fly back to Oregon and get my kid, hang out with him, and still manage to poke into her life at the same time.
So let me ask you a question here. So many people don't experience that because there's a separation, there's a divorce, maybe there's some soul searching that goes on for a year or so, but then they just go their separate ways. But you didn't. And so what would you say to the person that maybe they may not even know there is hope, that it could work out again, but there is. God knows. What would you say to that person that maybe is in that situation and is considering they're just at that threshold of possibly giving up and just moving on and forget the whole thing?
You got to hold on to what you know is right, and it's in your heart. You can't lose the fact that you two are together for a reason to begin with. You both love each other. You both committed to each other, and I feel without God in your lives that you're not going to fully understand what it is to be together. And I didn't. I didn't know what it was all about. And you really, really can't lose hope because for us, we were in the most hopeless area. There was nothing. Papers were signed, I moved on, she moved on, the agreements were set, and that was it. And you can't say that it's normal for anybody after 5 years want to be back together because I couldn't do that. She couldn't do it. Nobody could do it, but God did it. You know, that's who you have to hold on to and surround yourself with good people, positive people. Don't look outside. it doesn't matter what's going on out there. It doesn't matter what your neighbors, your friends, anybody else are doing. You got to focus on each other.
So, but you're together.
Yes.
And now. And so what was it, Jill, that, so he hasn't given up. What was it that caused you to get back together?
Well, I mean, I have a whole nother story that belongs on a whole nother stage of what God took me through the 5 years that we were divorced. But Josh just kept bringing it up and talking about it. Every time I saw him, he's like, hey, you ready to get back together? No. You're dating someone. Go away. What? No. And then I went to this Bible study. I was super bad at attending it, and I only remember one line out of the whole 10-week study. And the speaker said, if you get an idea that's so crazy and so impossible, and you just know there's no way you could ever do it, that's God. And a week later, Josh showed up at my work right after Thanksgiving. It's been 5 years since we had signed our divorce paperwork. And he said, I just want you to know that if you ever want to get back together, I'm still ready. And I looked at him and I was like, okay, I'll think about it. And then we both looked at each other because we didn't know what to do. Had never said that before. It'd always been no, go away. And so we started dating long distance, and 7 years ago today, on Father's Day, Josh showed up in a U-Haul, and he picked up me and our oldest son, Jaden, and he moved us to California so that we could restart our life together.
And how many kids?
We now have 4 children. So we have our oldest, and then 3 more. Just keep fixing things with kids, you know? No, they're
And
great.
So, Josh, if there's somebody here who's considering divorce, considering walking away, what advice would you give them?
Just like I said before, I mean, don't lose hope. Don't give up. If you feel it so strong inside of you that there's something there worth fighting for, then fight. It's not worth losing hope, because he's watching. He's there for you. He's going to be with you no matter what stage you're in. And you have to hold on, because it's bumpy. No matter what stage you're in, it's bumpy. But it's so worth the fight. And we can tell you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, for all of you, the challenge again is to hold on to all that God has given you, to not let it go. I've had things in my life that I've let go that I just look back on and think, wow, how stupid was I to let that go? That was so much better than what I could come up with on my own. And so the challenge again for all of you is to hold on. And then obviously I would encourage you to connect with Josh and Jill. They have many great things that they can speak into anybody's journey, no matter where you may be on that journey. Let's have a word of prayer, and our worship team's has a special song for us that we're going to close out with, and you can just remain sitting and just enjoy the song as they sing it. Thank you, Father, for this morning, Lord, and for all that you've given us in our lives, especially for your Son. Lord, help us to hold on to him, stand firm in our faith, to be watchful for all that the enemy has against us. Lord, to act like the men that you've created us to be strong in this life for you. Lord, help us to be the people you've called us to be. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.